This meeting is being recorded.
All right.
Excellent. That was official. That sounded official. Welcome, everybody. Lauren, do you feel ready?
I think so.
Excellent.
We could all like start off with just taking a slow, deep breath.
That's what I was, yeah, you're right ahead of me. So welcome, everybody from near and far. It's great to have you here. And I want to ask everybody, as Lauren said, to start by taking a slow breath, take a deep breath, release, relax, and let go. We have an hour together. We can calm our nervous systems, absorb some good information, have a little fun, do a little learning, find a little connection. It's great to have you all here. I'm Elaine Taylor-Klaus. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Impact Parents, and we are an online resource for parents and professionals supporting complex kids. We provide training, coaching, and support for parents of complex kids. And I've been a supporter of almost everything Lauren Foster has ever done over the years, including the Powerful Project. And so I'm delighted to be your MC for tonight for this program. The Powerful Project is on a mission this year to support teens and young adults who are stuck in the middle, who may not have access to quality support, either because of financial limitations or health insurance or high deductibles or a variety of reasons. And what happens is the Powerful Project makes a mindful match, providing resources and services to meet the needs of each individual, because they truly care about everyone involved in the project, the beneficiaries, the clinical partners, the speakers, the donors, et cetera. And you can feel that with every encounter with this organization, which is, by the way, 100% volunteer run. So all donations, all dollars go directly to support individuals. There's extremely low overhead. So this speaker series is free and available to the public. And if you can make a donation, we would greatly appreciate it. Again, all donations go to help us place people in need with clinical support. And if you're interested in getting involved, you can email admin@powerfulproject.org if you want to provide some support in terms of fundraising, marketing, PR, outreach, any of that good stuff. So again, if you haven't donated, any amount is appreciated. You can donate at the website, powerfulproject.org, or on Venmo @powerfulproject99. That makes me think of Get Smart. Do you remember 99 on Get Smart? @powerfulproject99 is your Venmo address. And Lauren, if you could put that in the chat, that'd be great. All right, so I get to introduce our fabulous speaker for tonight. I'm very excited. I want to welcome Jen Liam, otherwise known as the Ninja Therapist. And Jen has been a supporter of the Powerful Project Mental Health Scholarship Program since its inception, and we're really grateful for her partnership. And tonight we're really excited to hear from her and hear more about the work that she does and her very, very unusual approach to the therapeutic realm. So let me tell you about her. Jen has been in private practice in Atlanta for over 20 years in a variety of clinical environments, where she's really learned the importance of meeting clients where they are, bringing levity and humor whenever possible, and foregoing a one-size-fits-all approach. She brings her authentic self, interests, and passions to her work, with a strong belief in the connection between physical and emotional health, a clinical understanding of how our bodies hold anxiety, trauma, and grief. She became a personal trainer so that she offers a whole self therapy that gives clients the opportunity to work on both their emotional and physical selves at the same time. Isn't that cool? She's created a therapeutic office house that represents and highlights how she works, lighthearted and fun, while simultaneously focused, intentional, and hardworking. Here's the fun part. Jen competed on American Ninja Warrior in seasons 7 and 8. Being a therapist and an American Ninja Warrior complemented each other surprisingly well. While at her job as a therapist, she works with people to overcome their obstacles. She was also working publicly to overcome her own. Jen, thank you for being here. I want to turn the screen over to you and invite you to meet our community.
Great. Thanks, Elaine. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for being here. I know we all have 5,000 things to do on any given day, so thanks for spending an hour. I will try to make it worth your while, informative, hopefully a little entertaining. Also, big shout out to Lauren. Thank you so much for organizing this. We've known each other for years, and like Elaine said, big fan. If anybody can donate to the Powerful Project, please do. I will say, as I have told her, she was instrumental in getting me out of my comfort zone to do this. I'm passionate about what I do. Being a therapist, my comfort zone is talking with one person at a time, maybe four if it's like a family. So presenting and is not my comfort zone. Technology, all this stuff. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm excited to do it. Bear with me if there's any glitches. And
you're doing great so far. Keep going.
Please donate if you can. Okay, so I should probably say my passion for the combination of physical and emotional health really started probably back when I was 18. I was playing soccer for a Division I college on a full scholarship that I had spent most of my life trying to get said scholarship. And then even before my first year, had to leave because of my own mental health issues. So this, big goal that I had kind of got usurped because of mental health issues. And there just wasn't the support back then for athletes that I believe there is now. And I feel, very, very strongly about doing what I can to provide that support. So that is another little part of the puzzle. And then, yes, I found myself, I've always been an athlete, did triathlons and cycling and blah, 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 blah. And then found myself on American Ninja Warrior. At which point I was 42 then, I guess. And I found that some old stuff that I thought I had worked through being an athlete kind of got kicked back up again because for me, American Ninja Warrior was very different than being a soccer player where you have 20, 21, 22 other people, well, 21 other people on the field that people are looking at, right? You're standing up there, everybody's looking at you. And I was super anxious. And so I had to figure out how to calm my body down to be able to not only think about how to do the courses, but also to be able to balance and to do obstacles that requires you to be in charge of your body, right? So that I really kind of it re-engaged my whole love for thinking about how do I use my emotions to calm my body, and then how do I use my body to calm my emotions. So that is where we are today. I have a quick little 10-second clip of me falling in the water on the show. I was on the show twice. I fell in the water twice, but it was a lot of fun. So let's see if I can get this, just a little clip to let you know what that was like.
Welcome back to American Ninja Warrior, coming from Universal Orlando Resort. We're right on New York Street, where hundreds of movies and TV shows have been filmed. But so far, this course has been a horror show for our ninjas. 56-year-old rickshaw driver Jeff Brown thought he knew the route to success on the rolling log until he hit a dead end. Oh, slam dunk. Jen Liam, the ninja therapist, analyzed the course perfectly early on before seeing her session come to an end on the tire swing. Oh! And Mark Kolk.
All right, so that was that. Came through, okay?
Yes.
Great. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with the slides. I'm going to start with a video clip here from the Drew Barrymore show that I'm not going to lie, came across my TikTok feed and I loved it. So this is how we're going to start.
What's one thing that you advise, or do for yourself in the morning to go and be you that day?
Okay, well, what I do in the morning is I work out.
Okay, every day?
Every day,
Oh,
pretty
God.
much. No, Drew, really. It's like, you've got to do hard cardio to get yourself, I'm sorry, you do. I'm sorry, you do. We need it in our bodies, but we need it in our brains. Your brain needs it.
How long?
something that actually makes you feel joyful while you're doing it, or it won't work, because this is not going to get her done.
Okay, that's good. That's okay. All right, then I'm going to do it in the morning in honor of you. I'm going to start, and I've got to be consistent with it. What's one thing that you advise?
Let me get out of here. Great. Okay, so yes, all made sense. I was a little hesitant about showing that clip, truth be told. I love her point that it's good for the brain, and just the idea how she says find something fun. You know, we got to find something fun, otherwise nobody's gonna do anything that we don't want to do. But I was hesitant to show it because the whole idea of you have to do it every day and you have to do it in the morning, I think can be a little bit daunting for people. I know for me, if I was told I had to exercise in the morning, it wouldn't happen because I want to sleep in the morning, and that's it. And if somebody said that I had to do it every day, you know, that would feel like a big chunk to bite off. So just kind of, that's the disclaimer, right? Is like start easy, start slow, start with something that feels good. But the main point being that it is good for our brain. And so this.
What's one thing that you advise?
Just kidding. Okay, I'll talk about a little bit about the books that I'm using as my main reference points, but one of them is The Body Keeps the Score, and it's just an amazing, amazing book. I will only barely scratch the surface of all the good information that's in there, but one quote that just really kind of hit me was this one: the most important job of the brain is to ensure our survival, even under the most miserable conditions. Everything else is secondary. So to me, if we know that our brain needs exercise to function at its highest, and our brain is the thing that's in charge of keeping us alive. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Our brain keeps us alive, but that just hit me a little bit differently, right? So exercise, it really does equal survival, and I would add that it really equals thrival. It equates to not just surviving our life, but thriving in our life. So that was a quote that I really enjoyed. Let's see, on to the next. Okay, so these are the 3 books that I'm using. Mainly, I already said The Body Keeps the Score. Anything by, I mean, Bessel is just, I've seen him present once, and the wealth of information that he has. So like I said, I'm going to be kind of high level here, but if this is of any interest of you, please read it. Spark is a fantastic book that really goes into neuroscience, kind of in a way that makes my brain spin a little bit because it's so detailed. But there's some great case examples and just real practical use about how exercise can be helpful to different parts of our brain. The Mountain Is You is actually one that I had not intended on. I started to read it for myself just over the last couple months. Yeah, go ahead.
So everybody could see me. We want to see you talking, not me. I think maybe your screen is mirrored, maybe, or.
Let's see. How do I do this?
All right, guys, just bear with us. We don't want to see my face.
You're sharing. Any ideas how to?
So when you stop sharing your screen a minute, Jen.
I'll just stop.
Okay. And then you can share it again when you've got slides. There's something that's happening in the slides that's catching the other presenters.
Okay, yeah, let's try that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Thanks, everybody, for your flexibility here.
Anything that I need to do?
I just wonder, no, I think if you have it on slideshow, we should just see your slides. And, okay.
So
let's try it again.
Am I sharing now?
Nope. Right now we just see you.
Okay. And entire screen.
Which is good because we want to see you.
All right. How's that?
No, now we see me. Okay. So I know what it is. So when you click to share a screen, you have to click on the PowerPoint and not your whole computer. It's sharing your whole desktop.
Okay. All right. So when I hit
click share screen, you're going to see options.
Yep.
Click on just the PowerPoint, and that should.
Got it.
Thank you, Tinsley. Okay, she said now she sees Jen.
There you go. Okay, great. Thank you. And now you're muted.
I wonder what happened.
I don't know. Can you unmute, or do you need us to unmute?
Thanks for bearing with us, guys. Let's see. How do
So
we,
funny.
all right, so do we need to unmute her?
There we go. Is that?
There
how's
you
that?
go.
We're good. We hear you now.
Woo! Okay.
Gotta laugh, right? Can't
All
sweat
right.
the small stuff here.
Absolutely. Okay, so now you can see my screen. You can see me. We're good to go?
Yes.
Okay. All
Good
right.
to go.
What in the world was I saying? Okay, so The Mountain Is You. So this is a book that I actually picked up just on my own. I was intrigued by it, and it is fantastic. I would also highly encourage it. And it ended up being a great addition in terms of when I talk about motivation in a couple minutes, and like how to get ourselves to do the things that we say we want to do. So these are the 3 books. Get them, read them, and I'll do my best to synthesize them in some comprehensible fashion. All right, so on to the brain. Oh, there we go. And cool. Okay. So the first part of the brain that I want to talk about is down there on the left, the hypothalamus, which, as you see, controls appetite regulation, cravings, and addiction. So the addiction part is particularly interesting to me for lots of different reasons, because the next slide, I'm sure that many of you have probably seen these little devices around, all this vaping stuff, right? So if I had a dime for every time a client came in and said that they wanted to talk about and work on vaping less, I would have a lot of dimes. I mean, at least once, twice a day, people want to talk about this. And so when I saw the diagram of the brain and thinking about, okay, so high intensity, how would that work? How does high intensity interval affect that part of the brain that then might impact our ability to have more control over our cravings and addictions? That to me is fascinating. And so I started to use some of it with my clients. And, I mean, especially, gosh, over quarantine, just people thinking it's better than cigarettes, college, it's just everywhere. And it's interesting because I feel like more college kids are wanting to work on this and are wanting to stop this because they can kind of see their future. I hear a lot of, I don't want to be a mom who vapes. I don't want to be a dad who vapes. I don't want to be a professional who vapes, that kind of thing. So I started to play around with, okay, well, how about if instead of, acting on that impulse right there to take a pull, you do, 15 burpees, or you go for a run around, around your yard, or you do some jump, like get a jump rope, anything, to do to cause a pause in that. I feel like I want to do something, and then do it, right? To give your brain a second to have a different thought and to get in a different part of its brain. And people have come back and said that it's been really helpful when they can get themselves to not act on their first impulse, but instead to interrupt that thought with an exercise, and a high intensity exercise. It's been helpful. So, I think that's pretty cool. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to say about vaping. I mean, that kind of covers it. And a lot of people want to talk or ask about, how long, how, kind of like Drew, how often, how long, what do I have to do? In Spark, he says that there have been some studies done in Japan that shows that 20 to 30 minutes of mild cardio exercise only twice a week, over 12 weeks, produces a difference in. And the fact that we have the technology now to be able to see our brain pre and post exercise in the moment, and also long term, I think that's pretty cool. So here's a great, I can't pull it up, but there's the link for anybody who wants it. But it's a great article about how just 15 minutes of working out and exercise can really, really be helpful and beneficial. It doesn't have to be, 2 hours long. It doesn't have to be anything that's going to make you miserable, just something that is enjoyable. So that is that. Okay, so let me talk some about motivation. And this is where the book, I get really jazzed up about motivation because I feel like I would be remiss talking about how to help people build an exercise or a movement program without also talking about how to help people get motivated to do such a thing, because that usually is the first thing that people ask me about when we talk about it is, yeah, well, if I could do it on my own, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you talking about how to do it, right? Which makes sense. And also it makes sense why the fitness industry is a billion-dollar industry, because if, we're not talking about how to help people emotionally do what they need to do, then, it's kind of a moot point, I think. So motivation. And again, this comes from the book, The Mountain is You. And before I read the quote, let me just explain it for a second. She takes self-sabotage and kind of turns it on its head, which I think is pretty fascinating, as opposed to self-sabotage being this, I'm sabotaging myself. I'm sabotaging this negative thing that we are doing to ourselves. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's about something that's much deeper that we're completely unconscious about because we don't know what it is that we are operating from, if that makes sense. And when you read this quote, right, people are pretty incredible in the fact that they basically do whatever they want to do. This is true of everything in human life. Regardless of the potential consequences, human nature has revealed itself to be incredibly self-serving. That was also another whoa, I just kind of sat there for a second thinking about that. Like when you think about the fact that most of us do what we want to do most of the time, whether it's good for us or not, if we can't get ourselves to do something that we say we want to do, why is that, right? What is that barrier that's preventing us from actually doing what we say we believe we want? Well, maybe, she argues in the book, maybe there are some beliefs that we're not aware of that we are subscribed to more about ourselves than the beliefs that we actually want to have about ourselves, if that makes sense. So let me give you a great example of this. Okay, so not my actual client, as you can see, but I'm going to tell a client about a story. And it was one of my very early on clients that I had just started combining doing talk therapy and doing personal training with. So she came to me, she was in her mid-20s, came to me, wanted to work on anxiety and depression, and she wanted to get in shape. Had a love-hate relationship with fitness. But she was working on her doctorate, professional, had a lot going on. So understandable that, she was anxious and depressed and was having a hard time fitting in an exercise program. So we worked and worked and worked. She would come to my at that point, I only had a talk therapy office. And then I would see my training clients out of the Ninja gym that I used to train at personally. I rented it out on a Sunday. So I had the whole thing to myself. It was confidential. I just see one person at a time in this big Ninja gym. So this particular woman, I saw her in my talk therapy office for a couple of months, and her anxiety and depression they were getting a little bit better, but she could not, for the life of her, get herself to follow through any of the plans that we were coming up with to help herself move. And she knew enough to know, she was in psychology, she knew enough to know that if she could get herself to move, that would help the anxiety and depression. But and we came up with everything between the two of us, wake up and have your shoes at the door before you go to sleep, text a friend to meet you wherever, make a lot, anything you could think of. Nothing worked. So finally one session I said, all right, how about if we meet at the gym? Let's just experientially, let's just get the ball rolling, try to get some positive momentum going in terms of exercise. Maybe that'll help. She was like, sure, at this point, what have I got to lose? So we meet at the Ninja gym, and one of her goals, one of her fitness goals was to be able to do a pull-up. So we warmed up, we're doing our thing, and she kind of like this right here, right? Had a band, and her face looked pretty similar, and she's grunting and pulling, and I'm trying to spot her, and all of a sudden she just kind of goes like limp, like her arms sort of straightened, and she it wasn't like dramatically fell down, but like she got out of the rubber band and she just stood on the floor. And I thought, my first thought was, oh, she hurt her shoulder or something. And she kind of looked glazed over, and she goes, all I could think about, and she got teary. It still gives me goosebumps. She goes, all I could think about was how my mom told me that I was fat. I was never going to be an athlete like the rest of my siblings. I ate too much, and I was embarrassing to her. That came up right there in the middle of her trying to do a pull-up. So we sat down right there on the gross, nasty ninja floor, and we had a session right there about that. And so, through that, she was able to tease apart it wasn't that she had a lack of motivation. It wasn't that she was sabotaging herself. It was that she was living her life based on messages that she had gotten from a little kid, which I would argue most of us do, right? So that's just a quick example of how motivation and really trying to be as aware as possible of what any of your blockages might be to put some of this in place. Okay, so after motivation, all right, we go back to, all right, the hippocampus. This is exciting to me. Okay, so down here in the right, the hippocampus is the part of our brain that has to do with memory. And it's the part of the brain that literally creates neurons. And this is where Spark gets super, super detailed, the book, in terms of like how this happens. And there's something called brain-derived neurotropic factor that makes my eyes glaze over, but it's still really interesting to me. So if you want to learn more about that, read the book. But for the purpose of this talk, the really cool part about exercise is that literally the hippocampus, it grows bigger as we exercise, because blood gets pumped into there, and over time it grows. And not only does it grow, but it spits out, it creates new nerve cells, right? Those things in our brain that talk to each other, that make us do everything that we do. It grows more of those things the more the blood is flowing into it. And so when we think about, how to put, and I think there are plenty of schools that do, when we think about how to get our brains into the right learning situation, getting blood flowing into that part of our brain so we can retain information. I mean, that part of our brain is in charge of taking in information, retaining it, and recalling it. All very different parts of learning, right? We can take in information, but if we can't process it and spit it back out, then it's pointless to have it in there and to begin with. And if we can't take it all in, obviously we can't process it and get it back out. So that part of our brain is the most important part for learning. And the fact that it is the part of our brain that grows when we exercise consistently is really pretty fascinating. And there's also studies around Alzheimer's and dementia that have been shown that as the hippocampus grows, likelihood and probability of brain, what's the word, dementia, or there's a word I can't think of, that there's less of a chance that would happen. So to me, that little part of our brain is pretty cool. So, okay. So when I think about what that means, right, to have, I think in athletic analogies. So when I think about what it means to have neurons that are firing online versus neurons that are just kind of, sort of lackadaisical and are kind of spitting out information and kind of retaining it. And, I have this image the other night of Serena Williams playing tennis, because like, I want my neurons to fire like that, right? I want them to be like, bam, I got wham, and the noises that they make, and like, they like get the information and then they send it back. And that's what our neurons do. They get it and they send it back, and they get it and they send it back. And so to me, this image of like, literally when we exercise, it puts our brain in a spot to be those neurons that are like those kind of tennis players, and not like how I play tennis. I love tennis. I don't play it very well.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Like, what about just for someone who might be starting out, like if they just started to do some sit-ups? Like, anything's better than nothing, right?
Exactly. Anything's better than nothing. Yep. And that's where like that article, the 15-minute workout, how it's beneficial. It gives some examples of, just do some sit-ups, do a couple wall push-ups against the wall, get a jump rope, take a walk up the street. It doesn't have to be elaborate. In fact, later I got a bunch of exercise bands just to kind of show some different exercises, because I think they can be, thinking about having to have a whole rack set of weights and dumbbells, that's overwhelming, and most people aren't going to be able to afford that or put that anywhere. So yeah, anything.
Thanks.
Yep. And in a second, I think it's coming up, there's just a slide about like aerobic activity and the difference between, low impact aerobic activity versus high impacts. A lot of people are like, what's the difference and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the moral of the story, I mean, the more I read all of this, the moral of the story is that anything is better than nothing. Anything is better than nothing. Okay, so I just love that. I want my neurons firing like these two ladies. Okay, so here we go. So aerobic exercise, a lot of people are like, what is it? So if you can, in general, I'll just read it. In general, if you're doing moderate intensity activity, you can talk but not sing during the activity. And if you're doing vigorous intensity activity, you won't be able to say more than a few words without pausing for a breath. So, I suppose that most people would say that having a combination of the two, of kind of some light activity and some heavier activity would be ideal. And in fact, when you think about, I think I was going to talk about this later, but I'm just going to talk about it now. When you think about the difference between okay, so back to this brain diagram here. Let me go back. Okay, so you can see that, so lifting weights, the prefrontal cortex, right? Like, how is lifting weights different? This is a question that I ask myself, and I'm, want to learn more about it. Like, literally, how is lifting weights to our brain different than doing high intensity intervals or doing aerobic exercise? But what I gathered from these books is that it is almost synonymous. So like, if we think about how aerobic activity helps our body, it expands our lungs, it gets our blood pumping, right? That's what it does to our brain. It creates more of what we want. That's what aerobic exercise does. It creates more. What complex activities like HIIT interval training, or where you have to do things that you're thinking about it, like ladder drills or burpees even, down to the floor, back up. Anything where you're crossing your body, anything that involves thinking, it makes those connections stronger. Right? So it's great to do aerobic activity because it builds more of the neurons that we want, but the heavy lifting and the complex activities makes what has been built by the aerobic activity stronger and more efficient. So not unlike what lifting weights does for our body, it makes our muscles stronger, right? So it makes what is already in our brain stronger. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. Okay. All right, so back to, all right, so aerobic exercise. All right, so here's what the neurons are firing back and forth. There are about 100 different neurotransmitters, 7 of which are probably the most common, 3 of which I have here: serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. There's also oxytocin, which you probably have heard, like cuddling, the cuddle hormone, right? Or neurotransmitter. Glutamate, GABA, acetylcholine, I think I'm saying that right. So there are several, but the reason that these 3 are up here that I'm going to focus on is because when we think about medication, these are the 3 neurotransmitters that medication addresses the most. Usually antidepressant, anti-anxiety are going to have something to do with serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So the fact that these are the 3 chemicals that are increased, right, when we exercise, that just makes good sense. And in fact, there's a quote in Spark where he says that going for a run is the chemical equivalent to taking a Prozac and taking a Ritalin, because Prozac is something that acts on the serotonin, which is kind of our regulator neurotransmitter. It keeps us in balance. And the Ritalin would be for keeping us focused, which, as you can see, the dopamine, that's the reward and attention center. And so what Ritalin does is it increases the dopamine, so then our brain can calm down because it's not searching and searching and searching for that dopamine. So going for a run is equivalent to boosting both serotonin and dopamine, which, you know, that's not a terrible thing. It's not terrible. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else I was going to say about that? And again, so much more info in the books, but yeah. Okay. All right. So what I used to say to people before, I don't know, a year or so ago, when I really started going down this rabbit hole of connecting all this stuff, after I trained somebody, I would always say, go eat some protein, drink some milk, have some tuna fish, if you're vegetarian, you know, bean, whatever, have some protein. Kind of my tagline when we finish. Now I've started to say, go have some protein and go learn something, because that is when our brain is primed. It's primed to learn stuff, and not only to learn it, like I said, to retain it, and to retain it in a way that we're then able to recall it, right? So all those things are firing and ready to go after a workout. So I think of both brain and body and what we need after a workout. And partly, you know, why, I mean, some people love working out, some people don't. Whether you do or don't, I feel like getting the most benefit out of doing something after, like, why not, right? Like, why get your brain in this perfect spot for learning and not feed it something? Similarly, why tear your muscles down, you know, by doing all this hard work and not feed it what it needs to regrow stronger? So it's very similar. You know, I kind of imagine now, like, these neurons in our brain, like, give me information, kind of like our muscles is like, you know, they're depleted, they need glucose, they need protein, give me that nutrition. Our brain really is like, give me that information, because I want to learn something now.
Cool.
Yep. All right. Okay. So any questions about that? Because this is sort of like now we'll kind of move on to regulate. Good to go. Okay. All right. So we talked some about how movement can help our moods. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about how movement can help us regulate ourselves. And Bessel talks a lot about this from a trauma standpoint, because obviously when we're traumatized, we are by definition dysregulated. And so, you know, and he goes into the automatic nervous system and parasympathetic and sympathetic and all that kind of stuff that I'm not going to go into right now. But point being that movement not only helps us move our moods, right? We move our body, we move our moods. It also helps us calm ourselves and regulate ourselves. So what do I mean when I say regulate ourselves? What do I mean by that? That's really the idea that I think of it as simple as feeling good in our body, you know, feeling good doing what we're doing, being able to be in charge of our emotions, being able to kind of hold the remote control to our own emotional experience. Kind of like I was saying earlier, I realized when I started doing ninja, I was not able to regulate myself as much as I thought I had been. You know, standing up there, having to balance when you're super nervous and 5,000 people are watching you. I was like, I'm not good at this. So kind of back to the idea of how do we use movement to regulate our emotions so that ironically then we can move even more. Okay. So when we think about, let me pause for a second. To me, the idea of how we even use our body to describe our emotional state is fascinating, right? Like all the different ways that and I feel like they're universal. You know, if I say to somebody, oh man, I felt like I was punched in the gut, right? Most people can relate to that. I got all choked up. My heart sank. These are all, you know, it might be to varying degrees and it might be for different reasons, but I think we can all resonate with how, you know, what these sayings feel like. And they're all tied to our emotions. So, you know, if we use our body to describe our emotions, then surely we can use our body to help our emotions. And I'm sure there's a ton of other, examples that I just can't think of right now. But I'm trying to pull up something here because, yeah, okay. All right, so I just want to make sure that the next slide is what I thought it was. So the next slide, just a trigger warning, is going to be of 9/11. So I know that is upsetting, and if do what you need to do to take care of yourself. It's not a particularly gory one, but it is one of people running, and I think it's a powerful image, so I wanted to use it, but I just want to give that disclaimer. So do what you need to do. It won't be on for very long. The point of me showing this next slide of 9/11 is because certainly for me, and people that I've talked to, when we think about that day, surely we were bombarded with images, but many of the images were of people running, right? People trying to get out, trying to do whatever they could, right? That is kind of one of the images, just people running. And so Bessel talks a lot, I'm not going to keep that on very long. Bessel talks a lot about how it is ingrained in us, it is in our nature that when we are in trauma, when we are upset, we need to move. And there's study after study in his book about how whether it's a car accident, whether it's a natural disaster, person-to-person traumatic event, whatever the event, when people were able to move their bodies, when they were able to escape, get out, and not even, it's kind of like, well, duh, if they were able to escape, they weren't as traumatized. It's not even about that. It literally is just if they were able to move in the experience of the trauma, right? So, and sometimes it was more about like helping somebody else, or being able, like people talk about being able to tap their foot, or be like anything that they could do in their body to process the trauma. The traumatic, their PTSD symptoms were significantly less than people who were trapped and couldn't move. So, to me, thinking about that is it just seems so invaluable in terms of, if that is how innately we process trauma, and I would argue, anything difficult, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, like how to take this and put it in our day-to-day lives, that when we are uncomfortable, if we move, it helps us feel better. And so, study after study about that. Okay, so I'm not trying to equate the trauma of 9/11 to the trauma some people have studying or doing taxes or putting slides together for a presentation. That's not, hypothetically speaking. But when I hear people say, especially these days after quarantine, people trying to get themselves to do something, to be productive with their brain, 9 times out of, I'd say 9, maybe 9 times out of 10, they are sitting still, right? So that is completely contrary to what we know about the brain, which is that we have to move to be able to access our creative side. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. So thinking about this slide, and thinking about how to use some of this in your life and to regulate yourself and to be productive and to get that executive functioning frontal lobe on board. When I see these images, this is the, exact opposite of what I feel like our brain actually needs. But unfortunately, I feel like in today's world, it's more the norm than the exception, that we're expected to be productive while we're sitting down and not moving and, have one task to complete. Without any extra stimulation. So oftentimes, thinking about a college person working on an essay or whatever, I talk a lot about when they're like, I get writer's block, I can't think, I can't, are you sitting down or are you moving? And so the whole idea of, pacing around, the pacing exists for a reason. It exists so that we can get our thoughts in order and, make sense of them. So thinking about even just, when I was working on this presentation, I would do a couple slides, I'd juggle, I'd come back, I'd go water the plants, I'd come back, I'd take the dog for a walk, I'd come back. Like, that is how I've learned. I don't know how I got through high school, but that's how, I've learned to make it less miserable, but also more productive, right? So really playing around with people that I'm working with and encouraging different ways to use movement. And I should say that most of my career was also, I shared a waiting room with occupational therapists. So really firsthand also got, experientially the understanding of the difference between trying to get a kid to talk when they're sitting on a couch staring at me versus when they're on a swing, right? Or versus when they're spinning, or, any way to use movement to get our brain back online, I think is just invaluable. So, and I won't even go into devices and, you know, how that all leads into it. But all right, so this image is one that I really tried to steer people clear of. The next part I was going to talk about was another really great technique that proves how movement can really help us heal is a form of therapy called EMDR. Probably most of you, I'm guessing, maybe have heard about it, maybe not. But it's really super cool. I love the story of it because the woman who developed EMDR stands for, let me pull this back. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. That's a mouthful. Basically, what it means is that if you get somebody to move their eyes back and forth while they're processing trauma, it is very powerful. And the woman who came up with this, Francine Shapiro, I think it's super cool. She developed it, I guess, or realized it was a thing while she was hiking, because she was in the woods and she was thinking about, I don't know what it was, she was thinking about something that was disturbing to her. And she said she noticed that as her eyes were moving back and forth across the trail, she started to feel better. And by the end of the hike, she felt better. And so she went down that rabbit hole and realized that there's something very, very powerful about bilateral stimulation, which is where, you know, you're, oh, wrong one, ping pong. Okay, cool. So, you know, this whole idea of if you can literally just get somebody to move their eyes back and forth, it helps to uncover some of the trauma. And it also, honestly, it makes me think about when my client was doing those pull-ups. I mean, she wasn't using her eyes, but I don't know what was happening because she was struggling and something came to her that I would argue may or may not have come to her just sitting on a couch, right? She was doing something taxing with her body and it pulled up something that she had never pulled up before. So to me, that is an example of like an EMDR-ish kind of thing, and the you know, the power of using movement to uncover stuff that might not otherwise be talked about. And the other really cool thing about EMDR, and it's similar to physical activity, is that EMDR is not a language-based therapy. It's an experiential therapy, right? You get people to think and feel is the most important part. Feel these sensations that sometimes if we talk too much, and I'm saying this as a talk therapist, but it's true, sometimes talking too much takes us out of the physical experiences of something because we're thinking about it and we're using a different part of our brain than the feeling part of our brain. So the whole idea of, and then I started thinking, okay, well, maybe, you know, that is science behind why we can feel better after a workout, even if we go into a workout thinking about something, you know, like sad or mad or whatever the case may be, to come away from it feeling better about it. And I would argue, even as a talk therapist, sometimes maybe even better than you would have if you had talked about it, because you experience it in a different way and in different parts of your brain and in different parts of your body. So yeah, is that too small to read, or can people read that?
No, and we can maybe send some information after if people are interested. Maybe we can send an email out after with some resources.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Jen, I just want to check in with you around timing because we've got about 5-10 minutes left, and I don't know if you wanted to leave time for Q&A, but if so, maybe if you want to wrap, but I don't want to.
But also Jen had some examples to share, right? Like of functional things that whether they're a college student or a parent or anyone, like things to kind of start to bring movement into your everyday life.
Yep. And you tell me, I mean, I only had just one other slide about just how, you know, the different hemispheres and how movement can kind of help the creative side talk to the logical side and all that kind of stuff. And then there's some, I have 2 videos about how to use bands, the benefit of bands, so I can just kind of jump to that if you like.
I think this is a good time to give people some actionable takeaways. That's a great idea.
Okay. All right. So let me pull up, and I like this video because a lot of people think bands, like, you know, that isn't going to do much, but there's really a lot of science on how they can be super beneficial. Do you want me to, because of time, do you want me to just sort of mention what the videos are and people can look on their own?
I think that makes sense. And maybe we can send them some links.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's all
Yeah.
different kinds of bands, right? Like I was
Yeah.
picturing like a thick one.
Yeah. So there's like, so I brought some different ones and people, let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so, you know, these are the kind with handles and those are great. For all, I mean, anything from like bicep curls to all kinds of, in the video that I linked has some great full body band movements. The other kind of band is the kind without handles. And I think there's pros and cons to both. The good thing about the kind without handles, right, is that depending on how you want to use it, you can just use the single, or you want to double it up, right? Then it's like double the resistance. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility. And just for instance, these are just 3 different sizes, and there's 2 other sizes that I have, and they were like 25 bucks, I think. And I mean, you can really get a fantastic workout cardio and some
And
muscle.
you can get them on Amazon, right?
That's exactly where I got those. Yeah. Yep. And the other video, it might be worth watching because I think just from a personal training standpoint, a lot of people pay more attention to what's called the concentric action of an exercise, right? So the concentric would be like the harder part. So a pull up, the concentric would be the pulling up, right? And the eccentric would be letting down. So the easier part. So a lot of people spend more time thinking about the importance of doing the harder part and then letting the easier part just kind of let gravity take over, right? So that actually what more and more research is showing is that it's much more beneficial to spend time doing the eccentric slow, right? So instead of coming up on a pull-up and then just dropping down, right? Get up and then slowly go down. Instead of just doing a bicep curl with the band, you know, up and then down, spend just as much time. And the bands do a fantastic job of that because they keep tension on the entire time.
Great.
Yep. So,
Okay.
and so that is one about just the science of bands. And then
when you look through all the look through all the research.
And then this one is just some great total body and workouts.
Should we, you want to, I mean, someone.
So if you can send those links to Lauren, then we can include them in the link to the video.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything else, so there were like 1 or 2 people in the chat texted me just like they'd like to see it. The links are great, but they'd also like to see it.
Okay.
Lauren, I think we need to be mindful of time.
Yep. Oh, I didn't realize. Yep, there we go. We have time for like a question or 2 if anybody has.
Absolutely. I'd love to be able, I just want to make sure people have access to ask questions. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, capture in the chat. I want to give you, Jen, a chance to kind of wrap up your presentation, turn off the share screen, and let's bring ourselves back to the front of the room, if you will.
Yep.
Anything else you want to say to close up before we move into Q&A? I don't want to rush you through to that.
No, maybe in the Q&A, if I think of something that I didn't say or a way to synthesize everything, I'll spew it out.
Beautiful. So those of you who have used Zoom a lot, you may know that you can raise your hand by clicking on the reactions button and raise your hand if there's a question you want to ask, or feel free to capture something in the chat. I know we're near the end, so you may have some hesitation, but it's really okay. Let's give people a chance to ask a question. Great information, love the talk. So what would you recommend for a starter workout? That's one of the questions I've gotten.
Okay. I guess it depends a little bit on like current fitness level or current activity level. Is there a way to get that?
So let's assume we're starting with a novice.
Yeah. Okay.
Who wants to get into working out. Let's say we're talking about who was the person you showed the video earlier?
Oh, sure. Right.
Bree,
right. Yeah.
name?
Drew.
Drew Barrymore, right?
Yep.
What would
Yep.
you tell Drew to start with?
I would say start with walking. Start with some light resistance training, which again, bands is great because you don't want to, I think the biggest barrier, one of the biggest barriers besides the motivation and like emotional blockage that I talked about, is people go too hard, too fast, and then they're miserably sore 2 days after workout and they never want to do it again. Yeah. And the other thing I would say is to find something that you like to do. You know, if it's bird watching, then find a place you can walk and watch birds. If it's being social, find a friend you can walk with. But start slow. And I think the other really important thing that people that can be tricky from a personal training standpoint is people focus more on limbs than on core, right? Our limbs are only going to be as strong and stable as our core is. So that's a great place to start. Planks, you know, thinking about kind of strengthening front and back of our core, because everything comes out of that. So, you know, any kind of plank, any kind of like sit up, and then add a combination of some aerobic and some weight training. And I mean, I love working with moms and kind of older women, because I mean, bone density is a thing and all that, you know, we have to be adding some resistance training. So any light band stuff would be good to start with.
Beautiful. And I want to reiterate what you just said in terms of people's interest. I often say to parents, kids don't exercise, they play. Right. And so we need to, when we can make exercise play, yes, it takes a whole different way of being with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody else want a little guidance, input? Lots of thank yous. So we're a little after the hour. Lauren, I want to share some information with people before we wrap. Is there anything else you want to add?
Just Jen, just really quickly. So for someone, let's say like people maybe since due to COVID, you know, have stopped going to the gym. So if, you know, if you're sort of homebound or a little older and you're not going to the gym anymore, you could use bands, right? Sitting, right? So if someone who has balance issues, bands are still,
yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Okay.
And in fact, and it says some of this in the video, but the other thing, especially as people are getting older, you know, our joints don't move in quite the same way. And so if you think about, like, if I had dumbbells, you know, gravity is going to pull them down, right? Whereas bands, you have more ability to provide tension on all planes, right? I'm not just going down, it's pulling me in, it's pulling me out. Like, okay. So in terms of like joint stability is super important as we're getting older, and, you know, we want to keep moving. I think that's just something else to think about.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Awesome. Beautiful. So before we wrap, I want to say, first of all, thank you, Jen, for a really fascinating conversation. When you can take like two passions in your world and bring them together, it's such a beautiful thing to witness. And it's so clear that you have found a way to bring some of the most important things in your life together. So really acknowledge that, and thank you for sharing it with us. A reminder, thank you for those who are attending and listening later. Reminder to you that the Powerful Project Speaker Series is completely free, and we are really grateful for any and all donations. So you can express your gratitude for this amazing conversation. You can Venmo at Powerful Project 99 or go to the web powerfulproject.org. And Lauren and I decided at the beginning we were going to do something fun for you guys. So we've also got a special free, some gifts for you. And we're going to put anybody who registers in a raffle for some free books. So if you go to impactparents.com/powerful, you'll be able to download a free chapter of a book and get in a raffle for some other books, for a Kelly Dorfman book and something else. So impactparents.com/powerful. powerfulproject.org and Venmo at powerfulproject99. Again, thank you. Thank you for your engagement, for your interest, for being here. Jen, thank you for a really enlightening and just fascinating conversation and way that you blend it all together. Lauren, thank you for what you do in the world. You make a difference. And anything else before we say goodnight?
No, Jen, just so you know, there's lots of thank yous in the comments. Hey, Leslie. Thank you, Jen, for putting this together. We might want to do a part 2 or maybe do some consultation groups. I mean, you know how my wheels are turning.
Yes, take it away. Take it away.
People are interested, reach out if you're in Atlanta, because Jen has a really cool space.
Yeah, I want to go see that space. I think it's awesome.
Well, if you're interested, reach out to us.
And again, we will send this information out to everybody who's registered, and including some of the links that we didn't get a chance to see tonight. So we'll make sure you get that.
Oh, thanks, Kathy. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Jen. Everybody, thanks for being here, and sending you all with health and love.
All right.
All right.
Keep moving, everyone. Take care.
There you go. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.